morning, everybody. Hope you all slept well. We had a very interesting day in Thurrock yesterday. My name's Anna Locklin, and I'm the JobTown manager for Enfield for the project. I'd like to welcome everybody to the Lee Valley Athletics Centre, and during the break there will be a very short tour of the centre for those who are interested. The centre was used in preparation for the London 2012 Olympics. I think it's very fitting with the current sporting event happening at the moment to be using this venue. So lovely to see everybody again. I'm just going to run through very briefly the morning proceedings. I've got my colleague Helen, who will be moderating to make sure we all keep to time. There are no fire drills expected this morning, so if you hear the fire alarm, it means it's a real fire and the fire door is here. The toilets are out here, just on the left of the entrance when you come in, if you haven't found them already. Refreshments are in the back there. I think we can start straight away. Is the interpretation working okay? Good. Okay, I'd like to introduce Neil Isaac, who's the Assistant Director for Economic Development at Enfield Councillor, who's just going to give us a bit of context about Enfield.
Morning, everybody. Thank you, Anna, for that. It sounds like you're having quite a good visit, so I know there's a lady in the back who's going to go like that to me in a short period of time, so I'm going to be very, very quick. To set the scene for where we are in Enfield at the moment, I've been in this job as the Assistant Director for Economic Development for about a month. Really good for me, really good exciting stuff, lots of things happening. This will just put this into context for you in a similar way to the visit that you had yesterday. Where are we in terms of what Enfield has to offer? Well, we believe, a lot of growth potential. We are located very well in terms of transport. We have 312,000 people living in Enfield at the moment, 10,000 businesses, employing some 90,000 people at a local level. 60% of those are Enfield residents that take up those jobs. The kind of people that we do business with stem from small local businesses up to the likes of Coca-Cola, Kelvin Hughes, who you may have heard of. They make very sophisticated radar and radio equipment, and John Lewis, who are a big departmental store in the UK. The Upper Lee Valley growth area, which is where you're sitting this morning, is one of our major areas for development and one of our major areas that we concentrate on. We are also well positioned in what is called the London to Stansted corridor. So obviously if you have London in the south, Stansted Airport towards the north, and we are in the middle of that. And a lot of the traffic and the rail links pass right through the middle of that. There are plans, and if there are people from the government sitting in the room, I know some of them are, and I'm going to chance it, but there are plans that have been discussed for a lot of years to expand Stansted Airport. We will be part of that discussion, and we will be influencing the way that those conversations take place. The main things that I'm looking at and what I need to concentrate on, which I think is predominantly of an interest to you, is around employment and skills, to support businesses, to enhance and protect and encourage better business environments, so this becomes a better place for you to work and do business, and to attracting with investment. The kind of things are, where do these people come from, where do they want to go to, and is Enfield a place where they can base themselves and encourage more people to come and work in a certain industry or work in a way that gives them the transport links and the satisfaction that they need to do their business. We have an employment and skills strategy. It's been adopted by the council. It has 4 key ambitions, which are up in front of you. To help people access and sustain employment, to support local businesses to recruit local people, which is a big emphasis. You know, people will be mobile and will commute, but we want people to retain and develop a supply chain within the local environment. We want people to increase and improve their skills and qualifications and to progress into work, and increasing with investment in the borough and increase the amount of jobs available. And we do that by a variety of mechanisms with a variety of partners. Chamber of Commerce in the UK, the North London Chamber of Commerce, the CBI, local businesses, a whole range of different variables to make that happen, as well as the education establishments. We are looking to tackle entrenched worklessness. There is a problem where people that are out of work stay out of work for quite a long period of time. Those people tend to become quite hard to get to. They tend to have other problems just that stem from being out of work. So they might end up with being a bit depressed because they haven't got a job. And we're working with colleagues in the health team to try and find a way to break that cycle, to help people move away from that, to get into some kind of training, to get into some kind of employment placement, and then to move into a different world and improve their lives. We've got our own bespoke in-house job brokerage service, which is doing that all of the time. We have 5 people, 5 officers that are dealing with those people. And those people don't have to come. They come because they want to, and they want to make a difference. We work in partnership with colleagues in Job Centre Plus, our London Library Service and Children's and Public Health Services. And what we're aiming for is not just to do that as a quick one-stop, it's to actually make it work for a longer period of time. This is some smiling faces, some of them are in the room, some of them are not. But our job aspiration is to make that become part of the work environment, rather than part of an environment that just says, well, I haven't really got much, and that's the way my life is. That isn't the case. We will work with you to make sure that there's something different, something better to do. One of the issues that we're faced with at the moment, which was quite a new statistic for me, and I didn't quite understand it, is education providers, 74% of them, education providers, tell us that 74% of people that leave their care are ready for work. If you speak to the younger people themselves, that drops. And if you can see by these statistics alone, that's roughly about a 40% gap. If you then speak to employers, it drops even more. So there's clearly a reality gap that we need to try and understand what it is and how we can bridge that gap to make that problem go away. We need to create more apprenticeships, we need to make sure that people understand what going to work means, and we need to understand what are the barriers and why do people believe that situation exists at all. We're looking at our local businesses to enable them to procure contracts locally. We are doing some work with some major suppliers, with Centrica, in this case British Gas. They're doing a lot of work under their obligations around energy in this borough. They are employing local service providers and local companies to provide that work. Those companies are then going through a training program where individuals and companies get accreditation, which enables them to compete on a much wider scope rather than just a very small localised insular environment. We want to develop our town centres. We have a few in Enfield, 5 or 6 in Enfield, quite vibrant, but they are struggling. So we need to understand what are those problems, working with our commercial partners to understand how we can make those things different and how we can bring those town centres back to life a bit more. We need to look at the developing sectors. We want to segment our market a little bit more. We need to look at the areas of expertise. We have some quite good ones in this borough around food and food manufacturing. Health and social care will become very popular and very prevalent in this country in the next 2 to 3 years, so we start planning for that already. We have a good record in areas of logistics and the green industries around recycling and other such things that are becoming very, very popular, and this area is very, very good at it. Most of our business is located in this part of the world, in the big sectors. We have the second largest industrial estate area in London. So that's something that we've already got, it's here, we need to build on it. We promote inward investment. We promote a skilled workforce. The London Stansted corridor I've already talked about. Decent transport, green space, and a very good place to be. So there isn't a reason I can think as to why it shouldn't happen. Yet again, they're the kind of people that we're working with at the moment. They've already made inquiries, some of them to come and join us. We will be following those up and hopefully we'll get a good result. We'll do this through Growth Deal, through some European funding, through council funding. 40,000 new jobs, we will make a difference, and this last slide is important because that is what's being touted around my borough to all of the officers to be part of their day job. We get that right, we make an economic success of the borough, and people like you will be coming back here in a couple of years' time and using us as a showcase. That was really fast. I'm from London, I speak really quickly. I hope you understood it. Thank you very much for your time and listening. Very quickly, I must show you some of these that summarises that much better than me. Please pick one up and take one.
Thank you very much, Neil. I should have just said we have a few presentations this morning. They're all going to be very short, even shorter than Neil's, and then we have a panel discussion and then the break. So our next speaker is to give an official welcome to you is Councillor Alan Sitkin. Thank you very much.
Sie haben gehört, dass die deutsche Freunde keine deutsche Sprache. De l'autre côté, il y a les francophones derrière. Vous aurez un accent de Quimper et aussi de Bruxelles. So just to say that welcome to Enfield. I'm here as a politician. You will hear other people speaking about different things today. But I do want to salute a friend of mine who I'm replacing. I'm the young Delgado. He's my older brother. I'm the Cabinet Director for Economic Development. Many of you know Dell and the work he's done to bring us here. Dell has gone on to bigger and better things, and I'm stepping into his shoes here. So the perspective that I bring is a political one, because I know that we're talking about sharing best practices in relationship to youth unemployment, but everything takes place within a context, and there's different sort of contexts. Neil spoke of one, that's good. I'll be speaking about the political context. And to a certain extent, the application of what we discuss here to your different cities will depend on manifold factors. One of which will be the national political culture of your country. So, for example, here in the UK, you're looking at the country of what? Of a sense of entrepreneurialism, but to some extent it's also a country where state action has traditionally been somewhat weak compared to this sort of interventionist philosophy that you have in other countries. And it reminds you of what that Canadian economist, J.K. Galbraith, spoke about private sector wealth and public sector poverty. So this is a factor that we're dealing here with the UK. And there's also the second political factor we need to speak about is the deindustrialization of Enfield. Now that is a problem which, from my perspective, is political. We could have a long discussion about the reasons why deindustrialization has happened in Enfield. Some people would, yes? Some people wouldn't.
Can you use the microphone because they're having trouble with
Oh, okay.
the
That would be. Give the microphone, just hold it up. Is that okay? Like that?
Más despacio.
Más despacio. Okay.
No más despacio.
Lo siento para ayer a la noche con el fútbol. Okay. No sé si
No hay que mentir tan mal.
Okay. Right, so más despacio. Okay, so there's the politics also of our deindustrialization. And that's a whole other discussion in 5 minutes. I don't think we'll have time to talk about that. The end result is that Eastern Enfield we had a whole line of factories up and down Eastern Enfield. And they've been suffering for quite a few years. That led to mass unemployment. And what we're dealing with today are the children, or I would say the grandchildren, of the factory workers who have lost their jobs for reasons that we can discuss on another occasion. So then the question becomes, how do we react to this mass unemployment which we have in these formal industrial heartlands? And on one hand, it is possible politically for some people to say, well, we wait for, quote-unquote, the market to find a solution. But as my friend Neil Isaac alluded to, that's not our approach here. Our approach here is that it's our moral, and let's say political duty to get involved and to try to do what we can to work in that unemployment. Now, there are two ways in which intervention is usually done at this level. One would be to try to create greater offer of jobs, and we are doing that. There's been allusion here already to some of the work that we've done with some major suppliers in the hope that they will provide jobs that are suitable for our workforce, and simultaneously we're working to upskill our workforce that they can take on those jobs. But the second approach that we can take is also to try to promote entrepreneurialism, and here is where it's relatively novel, to promote entrepreneurialism, including amongst young persons. Now, I'm aware of the fact that this is an approach which is not necessarily very widespread, but within the UK persona, within the UK context, it is something that is conceivable. You will hear today from different friends of ours a a lot of the modalities and measures that are being followed to facilitate young persons engaging in entrepreneurial behavior. I need at this point just to betray my own approach to this. My day job is that I'm a lecturer in business. I'm a senior lecturer in business. I specialize in 23, 24-year-old master's students, business students, who are trying to enter the workforce. In their 30 seconds. When the crisis was at its worst, about 4 or 5 years ago, we became aware of the difficulties for master's students, much less of those who don't have that educational level, but master's students in business. We became aware of the difficulty they have in finding employment. And what became very obvious to us subsequently is that they have much greater options if they're willing to engage in entrepreneurialism. And we've seen a rise in entrepreneurial endeavors by young persons. I believe that's something interesting and useful to many of you. And applying that in your particular context, well, I hope you can make good use of that. Okay? So there will be other people who will speak to greater detail of that, but I just tried to give you a political background to the work that we're doing here locally. Thank you.
Thank you. I'd now like to introduce Martin Fitches from the Government's Department for Work and Pensions, who's going to talk a bit about, or to test your knowledge to see whether you were listening direct yesterday about the new Enterprise Allowance.
Hello everyone, like Anna said, I'm from the Department for Work and Pensions. I do huge amounts of work, specifically here in Enfield with the local authority, supporting them to try and get more and more people back into work, get people the skills that they need to get back into work. But I'm going to speak specifically now about one particular policy that the government has and one programme that we operate that aims to get people back into work by encouraging them and supporting them to create their own business. And that's something that we've called the new Enterprise Allowance. So really, this particular programme combines two of the government's priorities. So one, to reduce unemployment, and the second, to create more business. But it is one of many, many programmes that we run, particularly for young people. We'll come on to some of the details of eligibility, etc. for this in a second. But this is one of a wide raft of measures that the government have taken to support young people. Other examples of those are our work experience, that we ensure all of our young people have the opportunity to do, what we call sector-based work academies, where we ensure that people get the skills that they need for a particular sector, that they get a real opportunity to do some work experience and they get a guaranteed job interview. And another initiative that we have, which is called the wage incentive, which we actually then give employers some money in order to take a young person on, to take that person into a low-paid job. So they're just some of the initiatives that we run, but I'm going to speak specifically about the new Enterprise Allowance for the next 5 minutes or so. Lots of text up there, so I don't expect you to be able to read it all. But the main points in there are that this is something that's available to people who are 18 and over. So all of our young people signing who are eligible for Job Seekers Allowance. But we also recently extended it to some of our other main benefits, namely income support, which we generally pay to lone parents, so single parents, and employment and support allowance, which is our benefit that we pay to people who are sick and unable to work. So we opened up the eligibility for this particular programme to those two benefits, because we recognise that actually lots of people in those groups need flexible types of working, and actually setting up their own business allows them that flexibility to set up their own business from home, work the hours that suit their needs and their requirements. And so that's been very successful, and again when I come on to some of the numbers in a minute, you'll see how that's played through a little bit. The programme is made up of two main components. It's very, very simple really. The first component is business mentoring and support with your business idea, and support with putting together a business plan. So basically what we'll do is we'll work with you to come up with an idea to help you formulate your idea. And once you've got that idea, we then give you some formal advice and mentoring to put together a business plan, and a viable business plan, one that will actually be, that we hope will be successful. The second part of this is actually that we will continue to support you financially whilst you do that. So it takes away the risk of somebody leaving benefit and not having any money to rely on. So actually, there's an allowance that we pay up to for over 26 weeks, which totals £1,274, and that we will give people whilst they're formulating their plans and getting their business up and running. Once they've done that, and once those 26 weeks are up, they are then eligible to apply for a startup loan, which will help them continue to build their business. So, two main components to it: the advice and support, business expertise and advice, and then an allowance which will actually help you continue to live and support you whilst you do those things. In terms of some of the numbers and some of the successes in terms of this programme, we launched it in 2011. It's part of this government's pledge to tackle long-term or to tackle long-term economic growth. And since it was created, we've created over 40,000 new businesses. So quite an impressive number, really, if you particularly bear in mind the context of this, which are unemployed people, many of whom have been unemployed for years and years. So actually very, very impressive to achieve such large numbers. So if you think about that, that's about 2,000 new businesses every month that we're creating through this scheme. So I think you'll agree that they're quite impressive numbers. And again, as I alluded to at the beginning, it's helped specific groups in ways that we maybe didn't expect it to when we set out. I think the number that really stands out to me is that of all of those businesses, 7,500 have been set up by disabled people. So people who this scheme has given them the flexibility and the ability to do something different and to set up a business on their own terms. So I think that's quite impressive. You'll also see in there that around 3,000 of those businesses have been set up by young people. Again, that's very impressive. And actually a huge number of those actually set up by people over 50. So again, you can see that this specific programme helps people that we maybe wouldn't normally consider as our mainstream unemployed, and people who may have extra barriers to those people who've just come in and out of work, who've just become unemployed and have been unemployed for short amounts of time. So there's some of the numbers. There's some case studies up there. I'm not going to run through them in detail. I don't think there's any need. If you go on the internet and look at the new Enterprise Allowance, you'll find lots of case studies of this. We've got some real life ones here in Enfield of people who have made a real difference. I think some of these just demonstrate the scale, and people setting up businesses who are now featuring in magazines like Vogue, etc. So again, it started very, very small, and these businesses have really, really grown. One other thing that we've done specifically, another government initiative to support enterprise for those who are unemployed, enterprise clubs. And again, this is about really building that capacity in the community to grow enterprise and to grow business. So this is trying to get as many people in the community together to share their skills and their ideas and their aspirations and provide them the support that they need in order to set up their own businesses. And like I say, this is all about really trying to promote that idea that business and setting up your own business is a viable option to leaving the world of benefits and to becoming employed. So that's a really, really quick canter through the new Enterprise Allowance. I'm going to be on the panel shortly at the end, so you'll be able to ask me any questions at that point. Okay.
Peter. This is Peter O'Brien from London Council's. Sorry? Hello? Yes.
Anna,
Yes.
is it possible people don't speak so fast?
Oh, okay.
It's difficult to...
Translation.
We will slow down. Okay. We'll all speak slowly. We can let you have copies of the slides so that you can read them at your own time, in your own time. Sorry, please. I'd like to introduce Peter O'Brien, who has a strong connection with Enfield, who is going to talk about the London education and skills offer for young people.
Good morning, everyone. I come from London Councils, which is the body that represents local government throughout the whole of London. So we have a mayor that represents the regional government, and obviously we also have central government, but there is also a body that coordinates the work of local authorities in London. And my job within that body is around specifically those people who are aged between 14 and 19 and their education and skills. I want to just talk briefly about how Enfield compares with the rest of London. And first of all, you'll see Enfield has a higher rate of participation of 16 and 17-year-olds in education, employment and training than the average for England and for London as a whole. In terms of outcomes, by the age of 19, a higher proportion of people who live in Enfield achieve a level 3 qualification than is the average for London and for England. And then finally, where they go at the end of their education, on average, Enfield has a better progression of 16-year-olds and 18-year-olds into employment and further and higher education than London and England. You might then think everything's rosy in Enfield, everything is fine, but, and isn't there always a big question about what are the challenges, what are the things that need to be done? First, even though we have a higher proportion than the England and London average of people who are in employment or training or education, it is higher than neighbouring boroughs, and it still represents a significant number of young people that have to be helped. And young people leaving education early is still a big concern for the borough. So, reaching young people who are not in education, employment or training, because schools and local authorities can lose touch with young people who leave early and who don't continue into education and employment, is a big challenge across the whole of London. And specifically, when you think that these are people who perhaps haven't achieved very much, are also the people who have the greatest need in our community. Apprenticeship take-up is very low within Enfield. It's very low in London, it's very low in England. And we need to do more working with schools, colleges and businesses in the borough to improve the take-up of apprenticeships. Managing transitions, moving between the different stages in education is also something that is very, very important. And more than that, as some other speakers have said to you today already, moving from education into employment is also a major issue. Collaboration between schools, colleges and training providers. Now, it's difficult not to take some position about the central government policy on trying to get more and more independence in schools, colleges and training providers. That, in a way, works against trying to encourage collaboration. But where we stand not necessarily in the interest of the organisations, but in the interest of the residents, of the young people, and what works best for them. and there is significant evidence to show that collaboration between organisations works best for young people, and we want to try and encourage greater and more effective collaboration between organisations. And finally, the big challenge is working with businesses. In the past, we've tended to say there is a phase of being in education or in training, and then you move on to employment. And it's almost as if there's a brick wall between the two phases. Now we're seeing there is a need for better business involvement earlier in education, and for education and training to continue into employment, so that that doesn't become a brick wall. It becomes more blurred at the edges between the two phases. I was asked to talk about enterprise in education. And I have to be honest here, we do need to do more to include enterprise in schools and colleges, and not just enterprise in the sense of young people leaving school to start their own business, but to think of how young people, while they're in education, are more enterprising, and to link that more into the kind of skills they need to come out from education with, so that they are better fitted for the world of work, for employment, and for all the other challenges that life can put before them. And consequently, enterprise in education is in London's strategy for the use of structural funds. And we are looking to see how we can use those funds to better support enterprise and enterprising activity in schools, colleges, and in training. So, hopefully, I've given you some sense of what we're trying to do in London, but also where Enfield fits compared to London as a whole. And I have put these booklets, they are in English, but hopefully by looking at the charts, you will get some sense of how Enfield compares with London and with England. And I'll be able to answer some questions that you have in the panel session later. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Peter. And that we segue into an education provider. So I'd like to invite Malcolm Goodwin from Capel Manor College to come and say a few words about the college. I understand some of you will be going to Capel Manor College this afternoon. If you can get the chance to go, I do urge you to go. It is absolutely lovely.
Well, I don't need to say much more than that, do I? So thank you for that very kind sales pitch there. Yes, hi, I'm Malcolm Goodwin. I'm the Vice Principal of Capel Manor College. So my job this morning is just to give you a little bit of insight into Capel Manor and what we do. There's a picture of the office. My intention is not really to give you a sort of history lesson about Capel Manor College, but the point of that slide is just to say that in college terms, I mean, we consider ourselves to be slightly different from the norm, which I represent by the fact that we've got an old manor house there, which is at the centre of our grounds. So we are slightly different to sort of traditional colleges. The main focus of what we do is land-based industry, so anything to do with the land, animals, plants, trees, that type of delivery is what we're involved in. And for our industries in UK terms, that is rooted in history in terms of the industries, as is the college. Okay, to bring you a little bit more up to date, and I realise that's quite small for some people to see, but it's from moving on from 15 students when the college started, we've now got in the order of 3,500 to 4,000 students. But they're not all crammed into that manor house, they're actually spread across the whole of London. We have 5 centres across London, so although we're rooted in Enfield as a borough, we do actually represent the Greater London in terms of the courses that we do. And you can see see the places there. It's basically, for those of you who don't know, it's north, south, east, west, and the middle of London is our coverage. So the things that we do, yes, we call it land-based, but overall we teach things like horticulture, which is all about plant production, plant growing, gardens and so on. Arboriculture, which is the planting and management of trees, I suppose, generally. Countryside and environment, hopefully, is pretty straightforward. Outdoor pursuits is running around on quad bikes and kayaking and canoeing and things like that, so pretty exciting course, and there's places available if anyone's interested. Floristry, garden design, etc., etc., etc. You can see that there's a whole suite of courses there that we think are sort of interrelated. And that's one of my general themes, really. I think the world is not siloed into those separate areas. It is actually an multidisciplinary world. We try to give students experiences for all of those areas when they come to us. We run various different programs, as you can imagine. This is sounding like a sales pitch, but anything from day courses up to 2 or 3 year courses for students, but the whole suite of things. We focus on full-time and part-time students, but we are very interested and do a lot for work-based learners as well. So working closely with employers, we're getting students working in and studying in the workplace at the same time. The range of courses go from foundation level courses for us in the college up to level 3, but we are minded towards higher education, so we're always preparing our students, aspiring them towards the higher education and preparing them for it. We don't do the higher education ourselves at the moment, but I mean at the moment, within a year or two, I'd expect that we would have higher education in the college. For those of you who may be not familiar with the UK QCF levels and things, the lower levels there, foundation learning level 1, level 2 is sort of the schools level, and then into the higher education, of course, is the sort of university levels in the UK. And you can see the courses span a good many of those levels. Foundation learning I pulled out particularly, I think it was mentioned in some of the briefing. Of the 3,500, 4,000 students we get, about 10% of them are coming up to us with learning difficulties or other learning needs into the college, and I'll try to highlight some of those. So it's not a significant part of the college, but nevertheless it is a significant part of their learning and a significant part of our provision in the sense that they come in with fairly high needs. So when we're preparing people for industry, we're looking to prepare people for the general work skills or general life skills before they can think about sort of vocational progression. But you can see the sort of range of difficulties that students are coming in with. And although I say it's a relatively small part of what we do, it's an increasing part of what we do. Okay, so how do we do what we do then? Well, first of all, those of you coming to see us this afternoon, and everybody's welcome. What we try to do is to provide a very, very rich learning environment. Clearly, our industries are based on land-based courses, so we need to be providing resource in those areas. We have classrooms and computer suites and all the things that you'd expect from any normal college. But one of our classrooms is the outdoor environment. So that could be working in the gardens there. Well, I should also say the college has a big interest in commercial activities. We're not just an educational provider, we provide commercial activities as well. So on site, the gardens here that these students are working in are actual gardens that are open to the public, with paid entry and events taking place in the gardens, etc., etc., etc. We have a farm that's attached to us which is producing beef and lamb, vegetables for communities, vineyard producing wines and so on. So there's a commercial activity there in terms of the farm. We have a forestry shop for the florists. We have an arboricultural wood production unit for the arboriculturists, and so on. You can see that rooted into the college is that commercial aspect. So when students are coming to study with us, they're studying the background of the theory of their courses, etc., etc. But they're, on the practical side, they're getting real practical delivery in a commercial environment, and therefore understanding the sort of nature of commerciality as part of their course. And of course, in doing that, it is not just having the commercial environment available. The students will actually be gaining work experience in our environment as they're doing it. So that is prior to them actually going out and developing their employability skills through work experience or through working with employers in different routes. But the focus for us is apart from the education, is that skills development. So the young person has the skills, but they're productive when they go into the workforce. Neil said earlier that 74% of colleges say that they have great destinations for students, and I think I would be one of those. I would actually share in that. But the way to achieve that, so that, and maybe it's a mismatching figure, but the way to achieve that is to make sure that students actually do pick up that employability side of it. And that's partly skills, it's partly confidence. So, you know, we try to deliver that, as I say, in the environment by giving the students lots and lots of hands-on work in what they're doing to support their other classroom learning, but also working with teachers in a commercial environment that have got commercial experience. So that's the way we deliver on that one. I would say, as a college, Peter very clearly, I thought, talked about the enterprise agenda, and I would underline that completely. You know, what we don't at the moment as a college do is develop students' entrepreneurial skills. My belief is that all students come in, or most students come in, as being very enterprising by nature. But I do think colleges and providers can do a lot more to actually sort of encourage them into those entrepreneurial skills. So, you know, hands-on active learning for us is our approach. And if you come to us later on this afternoon, hopefully you'll see some of that in action. So, when I say success factors, I mean, I consider the college that I work for to be a success. And how to achieve that? Well, you know, we have an employability focus that runs all the way through. From the teachers that we employ, the way they deliver their courses, the employer days of the groups that we set up with employers, the careers days by bringing in people from outside to come and talk to our students. So the employability focus is at the heart and runs through everything we do. We tailor-make our provision in all sorts of ways by understanding what the market wants, the market being our industry, and then expanding our students as individuals. So that's what I'm talking about, tailor-made provision. And that leads on to, you know, we talked about progression earlier, but having the right progression for each individual student. So sometimes those are giving them the lowest level just skills for life, you know, training up to college and that sort of thing. But also having sort of intermediary awards between sort of classic levels there. So rich and safe learning environment, again, if you come along to see us later, you'll see what we mean by that. And we work a lot in partnerships. So, you know, the local authorities are very, very helpful to us. Employers are very, very helpful to us. And other providers. We tend to go to specialist providers in partnership where we need to. Staff development, we'll put a little emphasis on the staff, so our staff are experienced and trained, and we continue that going, so people are motivated and up to date. And I believe, you know, that's what makes one of the biggest difference for us, is that active and motivated staff. So I'll finish there, but if you do have a job to come and see us, it'll be lovely to see you later on. I think it's time to show me.
Des Johnson. Des is the Chief Executive of Enfield's Enterprise Agency called Enterprise Enfield.
Good morning everyone, I'm Sabina Johnson, Chief Executive of Enterprise Enfield. Enterprise Enfield is a not-for-profit, independent enterprise agency established in 1985. So that means this year we'll be running for 29 years. Recognised by the Department for Business Innovation and Skills, our services are predominantly available to pre-start, new and established business owners. And the support is offered at either free or low cost. And that's our belief, that if you're pre-start or start-up, you should have access to very either low cost or free support, because obviously you haven't got the means to pay. We have a team of 10 staff and 20 freelance business advisors and trainers. Sometimes we increase the number of freelancers as we win contracts, and it means that we can shrink and grow according to our success. And each year we see over 1,000 new clients. I wanted to say a little bit about our relationship with Enfield Council. As you're aware, there's 32 London boroughs, and originally there would have been an enterprise agency in most of them, but at the last count we're down to about 11. And we're here, we're in Enfield, we're thriving, and we want to grow. And I think part of the reason that we're able to do that is because the council does believe in the role of business support partners in assisting start-ups and existing businesses. And they do that in very tangible ways. And if I just go over some of the things that they've done recently, they've actually invested in Enfield Business Centre. We're located there. They've bid to the government to develop the business centre, so we're going to get a new reception with Wi-Fi, hot desk-in, mailbox service, and also it can be used for events. So it's really beefing up the offer in our business centre. And over the years as well, as an agency, we've bid for European funding. We've bid for European Regional Development Fund to work with SMEs, so that's small, medium-sized businesses. And on each occasion, the council has given us match funding for that. So that's really helped us to increase the offer to local businesses. And we've been able to help them with export, environmental management and access to finance. And overall, we've assisted 300 SMEs over the last 5 years. And I think just in a very practical way, the council is willing to support our bids, give us letters of reference, and just generally be a very supportive partner. Just to give you an overview of the current projects we've got for pre-starts and start-ups, we run a number of employability projects. We can help people into work, but I suppose more significantly, we help them into self-employment as well. And what we do there is we actually bring them in and talk to them, find out what their idea is. We wouldn't encourage anyone who hasn't got a chance to start up in business. And once we're convinced they've got a chance to do that, then we'll help them to attend free seminars, which will help them with finance management, marketing, and also business planning. And they also have access to qualified business advisors, and I think that's a significant offer from us. We really help people to see the right people. We run a one-day workshop sponsored by Barclays. This is a workshop where people will just come along and explore the idea of starting up. It's quite a technical day. It goes into detail about the legal requirements and their responsibilities. So at the end of the day, people really have a better idea whether the business is for them. And for some, they don't want to go ahead, and that's probably quite right. And for the ones that do, they've got a better understanding. That's very popular. We run that every 2 weeks and always get a minimum of 20 people attending. We also run a daily advice surgery at the business centre where anyone in Enfield, a business or a resident, can book an hour with a business advisor and talk through either starting or if they've got an issue. Recently, we've entered into a contract with Enfield Library Service and we're running the Enterprise Libraries New Disc programme. With this, we're working with 50 people over a year. Again, they're attending the workshop, then they're sent off with an assignment. They've got 6 weeks to develop a business plan, again with online support from a business advisor. Once they've developed a business plan, they can go on to access a lot more support through the library service, which includes market research and also some Microsoft Office cloud space. We've also been running the RSA Inspiring Women's Programme. This is an intensive training programme for women, and it's delivered over a 6-month period, and we take them through all the aspects of starting a business. We've been running this for 7 years. Each year we take 20 women through that, and we've just finished this year and 17 women have registered, so we're really pleased with that. We're a partner in the Startup Loan Fund, and we also run an annual business awards competition where we invite businesses in Enfield and also clients we've worked with from other boroughs to come forward and apply for one of the categories. There's a cash prize at the end and a lot of publicity, and it's just a way to celebrate business in Enfield. I think over the last year we've had some significant high street projects. We've run the Creative Market and helped 32 start-up traders to sell their handmade goods in a market in a very private part of North Enfield. We've also run a pop-up emporium, which is basically a pop-up shop in a shop that had been unused for 2 years in a quiet part of Enfield town. And again, we helped 20 young people to have their first chance to trade in a high street environment. I think for us, we feel the most significant initiative at the moment for young people is the Startup Loan Fund. The reason that this is significant is because the actual rate is really low, government-backed, 6.2%, that's the APR, and we, following on, once they get the loan, we get 6 months of mentoring, which is obviously really significant. We work with a partner to deliver that, and over the last year, 366 loans have been drawn down for young people with a value of 1.8 million, and of these, 50 loans went to young people in Enfield with a value of £250,000. So potentially that's 50 young people starting up in business in a year, which is obviously fantastic. And because of the demand from young people for the loan, we actually introduced the Young Entrepreneur of the Year award in our annual awards. And last year's winner was Dan Taylor with the Giving Card. I think that's just a quick overview of what we're doing in Enfield, and obviously I'm on the panel later if you have any questions.
I'd now like to invite John Spindler, whom I haven't actually met, so I'm very grateful to you for coming. Thank you, Des. Nice to meet you. Thanks, John.
Okay. Hi guys, am I the last one today? Do they all get relieved and kind of lighten up?
You're the last one.
Yes, it's almost over. Look at your faces, smiles. Okay, I'm John Spindler. I'm from an organisation called Capital Enterprise. Des is one of my members. We have 76 members. The largest group are a group called Accelerators and Incubators, and I'll touch on what those weird institutions are like, trying to grow the next Facebook or such. Universities, colleges, enterprise entities, and organisations like the Princess Trust. I've been asked today to talk about money and business. Kind of, our Europeans have took a minute. Okay, so I'm going to talk about money, a guide to alternative finance. Hopefully the clicker will work, and my hay fever will basically abate at least for 5 minutes. If it doesn't, it'll be a mess and you can be amused. Okay, so what's happened in the UK? It's a similar picture all over Europe, is the banks cannot lend. The government has tried, encouraged, enabled, kicked, but they haven't been able to lend. Ironically, they've been able to lend to individuals who are much more confident about their house price going up than it has been to businesses who are much less confident about the ability to make a profit and return. And that's an interesting debate, but you might have on the panel, why is that? But as you can see there, the figures are going down. Now, roughly in London, for every £1 lent out by a bank, small businesses put £10 on deposit. So small businesses are actually putting capital in, which the banks use to lend to individuals to buy stuff. And it's not getting better. And if you're a small business, it's very difficult to get a loan. And I know it's probably even worse in places like Spain and Italy and even France at the moment. So, and Portugal, sorry, did I miss Portugal out? Sorry, kind of. And it's even harder to get the banks to finance if you're a startup. Because you have no track record, you have basically very little equity. People forget if you're under 40 in London, only 20% of people own their own houses. And the vast majority of early stage entrepreneurs are between the age of 28 and 32. So unless their parents are prepared to put some money up, they don't have equity in their houses to borrow like a generation my age and older had. So what's the government doing about it? Well, the biggest thing they did is they gave 75 billion, yes, that's correct, 75 billion to the banks to encourage them to loan. And it didn't work, but it has allowed banks to give more mortgages out. Yes, that's what we do in Britain. They're also basically, in Britain, we have traditionally and long term, actually, the British government, God bless them, have been guaranteed loans. I know in Europe you have a thing called the European Investment Fund, which is a place like Spain does the same thing. Here we've had a scheme that's now started in 1971, which has been doing the same, and now it's called the Enterprise Guarantee Fund. Again, no, it's difficult to get, it's bureaucratic, and in particular the banks still have to secure 25% of that loan, and therefore are less likely to give it out to young people with little track record, etc. And so, what happened? Between 2008 and 2012, virtually nothing happened, and the banks haven't recovered. So, did the private sector do anything? Yes, they did that. So, from a standing still start in Britain, we've had an enormous amount of private sector investment in creating new instruments to lend money or to kind of to carry out some of the transactions that the banks used to do. We are now the #1 place in the world, London, for developing new financial products. And obviously, if I thought about, most people in Britain can only name you one company in the last 5 years who has basically emerged to actually make money. And I bet you it begins with W and ends with A. And actually they do have a bond for business, it's called Everline. It was called Wonga for Business, but that somehow didn't take off, so they renamed it Everline. But you can see there's a whole range of different funding instruments that have emerged. For startups, probably the most interesting has been crowdfunding. And there's two types of crowdfunding, and I'll touch on it a bit later. And for businesses, possibly the peer-to-peer lending platforms. But you can see there's loads, and there's more open every day. So there's a great lot of entrepreneurial activity going on. So what do you need money for? This is too small, you can't read it. I'm going to brush through these slides because I've only got a few minutes. But I'm going to usher them out to everyone here. There's loads of links, you get to see where everything is, where the money is, who to apply for, etc., etc. Because it looks like there's some actually startups and businesses in the room. So we'll go through quickly some of those. Des has touched on a little bit. And do you need 20k to get going? Startup loans are pretty good. There's also, if you're in business, there are the credit unions, the credit finance institutions, and there's some there that we've not mentioned. There, North London Community Finance. If anyone's in anyone creative sector here? Oh, well, interesting. Creatives don't get up in the mornings, obviously. So we've mentioned, and I want to basically kind of raise comments. Capital Enterprises focuses, if anything, on trying to get, at the moment, businesses to a stage where they can raise a significant amount of private sector. And most of it is about that. I want to go on to this. So where do you go if you want money in London? Possibly there's places like the process of going to try to start a business that you want to change the world. Not just and I should put some context on this, there's roughly in Britain, in London, every year there's about 150,000 startups created. This is the startup capital of Europe. 3 times the next number of the next city. So we have more startups here than countries. And this is a big problem for educators because every year 25% of our business base churns. New people come, new people go. And that's basically a very dynamic economy. And I want to say for you Europeans, a lot of that now is being started by Europeans coming to London to start a business. Very big numbers. So what do you go for? You go for an idea, you explore, you probably need your startup loan and money to kind of help you with getting your business off the ground. And there's a whole kind of range of things there. You'll see, I'm going to give you loads of links. Crowdfunding, 2 types of crowdfunding. Who's heard of Kickstarter? 2 people. Crowdfunding is pretty simple, but it's probably the main way companies that are going to take a risk and want to produce a product, as a friend of mine says, something you want to drop on your foot, or do something that requires upfront capital and risk. This would be the main way they're going to source their money from. Now there's 2 types. The Kickstarter way is where you pre-sell your product before you make it. So I want to produce some shoes. Well, before you basically create it, why not try and pre-sell them and then basically get some money in and then use that money to leverage more money and get your business off the ground. And the other type is investment, where basically you sell shares in your company. And then there's finance. And I want to run through really, you'll see so many links to what's happening about investment. I'm happy to announce in London, today I just got the email as I was sitting at the back from the Mayor's office that we will be launching a £75 million co-investment fund for London to invest in about 300 early stage businesses to give them around £300,000 each to try and become the next big thing. Hopefully someone of you in this room thinks I'm maybe the next big thing and maybe going to change the world. And basically, in the UK, there's been a lot of money pumped in to try and get people to kind of be more ambitious, to try and fund their dreams, and to basically kind of start to kind of create an economy that basically can itself basically start to generate wealth beyond houses and other such things. Yes, we all kind of joke. But there's some of the kind of things that go on. I'm going to round off by talking about us, what we do. We support people like Des. Des and Enterprise Enfield really is your first port of call. You are lucky to have it. As Des says, basically I have 11 enterprises. I used to have 22. I've lost 11 in 4 years. So well done, Des, to maintain and be innovative, to keep going, and thank you, Enfield Council, for doing that. And the only service that we do for end clients is that we take clients that occasionally Des and the universities and others have, and we introduce them to investors. So if anyone here is going down that route, come and see us. So that's me. Thank you ever so much. Happy to discuss loads of stuff. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That's present. I'd like to invite the speakers to just come up for the panel. If you have questions for the panel, you just move out the way. Martin is going to chair. So we have a roving mic. Do we have a roving mic? Sorry, Alan, can you move up a little bit that way?
Can I turn this off?
Oh, Julie, better not to turn that off. Oh. That's fine.
Okay, right, so lots of information there, and we've sort of run through lots and lots of different aspects of what Enfield's doing, what London's doing, what the UK government is doing to give young people the right skills to find work, and not just find work but create their own business. So hopefully you've managed to absorb some of that information, and I suppose this is now an opportunity for you to ask us any questions that might have prompted, and one of us will probably try and have a go at answering, or might be lots of us. So if you throw it open to you guys, so if you want to raise your hand, you'd like to ask a question, and we'll try and find the right person to ask it.
Can you say, sorry, when you ask the question, can you say which country you're from and what your role is? Thank you.
Okay. Can you hear me? I'm Nathalie from France, from Rennes, and I'm the local coordinator for the group in Rennes. I had first two questions for you, and the third one about crowdfunding. Shall I ask three of them? In France, there's an increasing literature about being an entrepreneur by necessity. You know, you start a business because you can't find a job, and that questions the way we support young entrepreneurs as well. Because apparently, well, what the French literature says is that these people need to bring up their self-esteem, and they need more like maybe confidence support, well, support to gain confidence rather than the usual technical support. And you mentioned earlier the importance of a business plan, you know, to be to reach the allowance system. So if you really think your system is appropriate to entrepreneurs by necessity, that's my first question. Also, you gave us figures about how successful the new allowance is, but do you actually measure the income of these 20,000 self-employed people over the UK? Are they do they live with what they earn, or do they remain like poor workers or poor entrepreneurs? My third question is more towards crowdfunding. We have it in France too. Also in a third way that you have mentioned, which is the donation. I'm not sure. I'd be interested to know which share of it takes. Does it replace? Is it a good substitute to your point of view to early financing solutions for new business? Is it a good solution? Does it take a market share? And is it enough? Is it a good system, or does it have its limits compared to the more traditional financing way? Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much for those 3 questions. So I'll answer the first 1.5, and I might turn to some of my Enterprise Enfield colleagues for some a bit more discussion about supporting startup businesses and how we might do that. In terms of your question about being an entrepreneur by necessity, I think when I started, I did keep the context that the new Enterprise Allowance is one of many, many measures, and absolutely I think we recognise the necessity in this country for supporting people with softer skills, so things around confidence, resilience, and motivation, all the things that you mentioned. And we have various schemes, and a lot of which we do with, we commission through local colleges. So we had Capel Manor here earlier, in Enfield particularly. There are 2 other big colleges who we work with, who provide us lots of support for the unemployed, to give them that confidence boost and to give them the soft skills that they need in order to feel self-sufficient and to be able to continue with this. There's also in Enfield and in particular and across the country a real focus on volunteering and about the skills that can give you, particularly if you've been out of work for a long time, and that gives you a slightly easier or an insight into the world of work, so hopefully gives you some of those softer skills that you've talked about. But absolutely, I think we recognise the need that you can't just have a single programme like this that works on its own. It's got to be one of a number of measures, and we can be very, very flexible in terms of offering those things. But I suppose it's about starting the conversation and raising people, giving people the options that starting their own business, that being self-employed is an option, and if they think it is an option, then we can provide them with various different types of support to get there. So it's just one of lots of different initiatives that we can do, but I think we recognise that there's a need to do more. In terms of the second part of your question, I don't personally have any numbers in terms of the success, so to speak, of those 40,000 businesses. But my colleagues in Enfield, Enterprise Enfield, may be able to talk a little bit about how they support new business and to make sure that they are successful.
Really, people do need to have coaching as well, alongside the traditional support skills. And on our women's programme particularly, we identify that, but we're very fortunate on the women's programme, which lasts for 6 months. It's funded by a charity. We're able to employ a personal coach to work alongside business advisors, and that's actually what is needed. The women that come to us, often they've been out of work for a long time, or they came out of the job market to bring up a family, and so their confidence is low. And we find that by having a personal coach, they start to get back their self-belief. And I think for entrepreneurs, that's the key thing they have to have. They have to have self-belief and believe in their resourcefulness to deal with everything that comes up. And I'm just going to introduce my colleague Liz Johnny, who's a business advisor, because Liz actually sees entrepreneurs every day. So I thought you might want to add a word about self-development for entrepreneurs.
Right. Good morning, everyone. My name is Liz Johnny. I work as a business advisor for Enterprise Enfield, and I've worked for them since 2007 now. And I'm one of the advisors that see over 1,000 clients that come through the agency each year. The majority are women. Many lack confidence, but as Des said, when you work with those clients and you start to develop their business plans, and that's when the confidence starts to improve. With regard to loan funding, there's a range of sources that are available. You do mention about crowdfunding, but the majority that have come through the agency we've been able to support through the Startup Loan Fund London programme, where there's loan funding between £3,000 to up to £10,000, and the majority are going for loans between sort of £6,000 to £7,000. We do make referrals, and there's the only odd occasional one that gets rejected for the loan funding, and we do support them throughout the entirety of the programme.
I'd just like to add to that from a local authority point of view, and hopefully you remember that I was the guy right at the beginning who talked really fast. But from a local authority point of view, I mean, I'd reiterate everything that's been said, and what we're keen to investigate more and help with, particularly with colleagues from Enterprise Enfield and other partners, is, and it was been mentioned before, that there's quite a vibrant economy where businesses, there's a lot of encouragement for young businesses and young entrepreneurs to start. Unfortunately, the attrition rates of those people failing, whether it's because their business plan doesn't stack up or whatever, is also quite high. So what we need to do is to understand what are the reasons for that and what can we do as a local authority partner to help. Now that might be something as simple as making sure that the facilities to operate that business are appropriate. That could be parking for vehicles. So if you were in retail, for example, are we going to make a lot of effort that makes it very difficult for people to stop and park and gain access? Is the public transport mechanism not good enough for where you are having your business, so your people can't get in and out to work very well? And I know that sounds quite simplistic, but actually I've been involved in a project here for the council where we relocated a lot of our depot space into one big depot, and then found that actually 300 workers couldn't get to work at 5 o'clock in the morning because there was no bus. So the whole thing becomes a little bit futile. So as a local authority partner, as the authorised body, where we step in, apart from helping with the supply chain and perhaps being the glue that gels a lot of this together, we do have influence over some wider infrastructure elements that make a difference to enable people to be able to succeed and have the longevity and the sustainability to succeed for a longer time. So hopefully that helps and makes sense.
Yeah, I've just kind of...
I'll put some context on this. Okay, the number one way people leave unemployment now in Britain is going self-employed. Number two is the RSA just did a big study. Most people that go self-employed is not necessity, they actually want to do it. Necessity is around about 1 in 5 of those numbers. Number three, self-employed earn an average £7,000 less per year than the person who's in work. So the kind of challenge is how can we basically make them have more sustainable lifestyles. I think the issue on what you're touching upon about this growth in self-employed, it's amazing. It's actually almost 1 in 5 now in London, and it has not stopped growing. Kind of the last quarter, it counted for almost, I think it was 63% of all people that went unemployment went self-employed. And you have now big movements. You have things like Uber and others, these platforms generating opportunities for people to become self-employed, and we have not adjusted. And we are in the process of adjusting. And so lots of services we provide, the council has to do, what the job centre has to do, and everyone else. So you're right, it's a dynamic time. Technology is changing the world. Crowdfunding is part of that pattern. You are quite right, there are 3 types of crowdfunding. In France, I think you've had a more around the social projects being basically funded and activities being funded. and arts events, etc., being funded by crowdfunding. And they're popular here. We have the reward base, with the most famous being Kickstarter and Indiegogo, and they're changing the way particularly creative businesses are getting funded. And yet they're still not basically mass use. Most people still prefer a loan, because that's what people like us teach, tell them. But I think actually in 5 years' time, you'll be much more given that you would not go and get a personal loan as much as you would to basically go and try and pre-sell and take away some of the risk before you've actually launched your product. And then you've got, obviously, for those that want to go for big growth, and the council like Enfield needs those. It needs businesses that will go and create lots and lots of jobs, be the next big thing. Lots of great companies founded in Enfield and come from Enfield, and I'm sure the council wants more of those, and they need to become the big businesses of tomorrow, not just the people that absorb employment locally. So I hope that helps.
I'd like to carry on from the word that John used, which is technology, and the word that Neil used, which was infrastructure, because we speak about the failings of a lot of young companies, and of course a young company can be in many different sectors, service sector, manufacturing sector. They can have greater or lesser reliance on fixed assets. Now, a lot of times the failing, the death of a young company is due to their inability to produce enough cash flow to cover the overhead. That is actually a level where the local council can help, if not directly, then indirectly. And I'm, of course, referring to what's called hack spaces, if you're talking about the IT sector. And a lot of our young startups do rely on information technology. Or else, if you're talking about a manufacturing project, it's what's called maker spaces. Do we know, are we familiar with the terms hack space or a maker space? Very simply, it's the idea that if you're a young company, you don't have the funding to buy your own factory, but you can rent for a couple of days here or there a space within somebody else's factory. That's for manufacturing. For IT projects, it's the same thing. You don't have the cash up front, you don't have the capital up front to invest in a big computer system, but you can rent access to somebody else's computer system for X weeks, X months. Now, if that is the cause of many of the failures of our young enterprises, we can address that by supporting those bodies within our council. And we do have an example in Enfield. I'll do a free advertising for a group called Building Blocks, which is currently working out of an old factory premises in Meridian Water. And they get some support from the council, and they open up their space to wannabe industrial entrepreneurs on a per-need basis. So that's a concrete way in which we can support our young entrepreneurs. I do like your division of entrepreneurs between those who do it by choice and those who do it by necessity. I think you're right about that. On the other hand, those who do it by necessity, they need support also. And you're right, they need different sorts of support. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and should we take another question? We've got a question here.
Can you hear me? Well, thank you for your presentations and for sharing it with us. I was just wondering if we could learn a little bit more about the phone. Is there any kind of specialization going on the type of business that you see popping up in the area? And if there is there any clear strategy being put forward for that? Because you talked about attracting big retailers like Ocado, etc. Or are you just leaving it up to the market? Thank you.
You left. You're the politician, you start.
The economists speak of something called the foundational sectors, which is to say that certain sectors of activity are discretionary. Other sectors of activity are more fundamental to
to your and my life. What is fundamental to our life? It's food. Everybody's got to eat. We need shelter, housing, which has to have energy running into it. So the second sector is energy. A third sector would be the money in our pockets. So it's banking. And the idea is that Enfield will, for historical reasons, will have certain specializations. But without getting into long macroeconomics, you can say that about Toulouse or Seattle. Why are they centers of aerodynamics? You know, Airbus and Boeing. It's a bit path dependencies, historical trajectory. So there's a bit of happenstance in that. So, on one hand, the answer to your question is we inherit what we inherit from the past. But I don't think that's your question. Your question is what we can do today. And we've decided to focus in Enfield on certain major activities, and I said foundational sectors, and specifically we're trying to start up food production. We're doing that through the council. Now, I know for Europeans this isn't a revolution, but in the UK it is somewhat of a revolution. The council is starting up its own companies in food production, and since we're on the topic of council companies, we're looking to start up our own company in energy. These companies will require subcontractors. We are hoping to nurture a fabric of young Enfield SMEs, which can be the subcontractors feeding into the larger companies that we are starting at the council level. So that's the vision there. Thank
you. To follow on from what Alan's just said, I'd like to reinforce that there are some things that are historical that we can build upon. I don't think necessarily that they've had the level of impetus that they could have had in recent times. It's almost like it happens and therefore you leave it alone and pretend that it's doing fine. So I think we need to put some more effort into that. There is also a situation where we need to understand what the skill set is that we can offer in relation to what the businesses want. And there is a bit of a disconnect and a gap there. So we are doing a lot of work with partners, some of which are at this table, some of which are in the room, some of which you will hear about or hear from, and some of whom unfortunately couldn't be around today. But we're trying now to understand what the pool of people is that we have to offer in relation to what the skill set and the skill need is. So that gives us the base that Alan's referring to in terms of what we've got. That will then enable us to look beyond that for a higher level of skill set. So one of the conversations that we are having goes some way to answer your question about how do we encourage something that's a bit different. We're talking to organisations in the biomedical industry. And what we do have is we have a decent location. We talk a little about logistics where we have good transport links, and we can enable that to happen. We're quite fortunate geographically. You know, we're 40 minutes from central London. You'll find that out later if the trains work. And we're not too far away from getting into the hinterland of the UK. So, and beyond when we get international links such as Stansted and everything else. So those kind of factors all gel together. So I think what we're doing is a progression now, is we're looking at the historical base, and if we need to build on that, or perhaps it is doing really well and that's it. I don't think it is. I think it can always do more. And then we will build upon that, and we're looking to expand that out. But there's a key element of that, and that is what is the skill set that we've got that perhaps we need to do better with. And I did mention earlier that in this country, and I'm assuming it's similar wherever you go, probably in the world, is we will need to look at things like social care and care for the elderly, which is an increasing marketplace. And we need to start thinking of that now, because it is no good in 5 years' time having an elderly population that is increased by 30% with nobody to care for them, and we end up in a blind panic. The only other thing, please allow me this just for a split second, that it's kind of anecdotal, but referring to, I think Alan said it as well, about technologies and how we make that happen. I was reading somewhere recently, you may have read this yourselves, that 50% of internet activity now takes place on the move through smartphones and iPads and all that kind of stuff. So we have to think of how does a business evolve now, because a business doesn't sit in an office block traditionally with lots of people tapping things into screens and hoping for the best. The other side of that in relation to things like social media, and this staggered me actually, and that is, if Facebook was a country, it would be the 3rd biggest country on earth. So if you think of probably everybody in this room, I would guess, has access to Facebook, you have access to that amount of people.
You talk about the type of businesses that are being set up. I've been working on the RSA Women's Programme since 2007, where each year 20 women have the opportunity to start up a business. I do report and analyse the data. Over the last 4 years, there's 2 vertical sectors that are very, very popular for women setting up a business. One is food-related businesses, and the other is consultancy. And that's basically for women that are in the Enfield area. Okay, so those are the 2 main areas, food and consultancy.
Okay, that answers your question very fully. And I think we had a question at the back.
But I had the very same question, so that's been really addressed. Thank you.
Great. Okay, I think we've got someone with a hand up over there.
My name is Caroline, and I'm from Kiev in Poland. I represent the coordinator here. And fortunately, thanks to my friends, I have only one question. You said that you had to create about 30,000 of newly created entities. And what about their viability? Because in my city there's about a population of about 200,000 of people, and we have about 28,000 of business entities, but their life is rather short, about 1 or 2 years. Do you have any programs for those who consider to close their activity?
When you say about the entities, you mean you have projects to help businesses that are struggling?
I'm asking about the projects for those people who consider to close their activity. How you help them to be involved in their business. And about the statistics that how many, for example, how many business entities are closed in the period of the first 1 or 2 years of existing.
I don't hold those statistics.
Well, I think you need to make a division, a very big division, between self-employment and business.
The mass majority of self-employed people, the number 1 self-employed job, by the way, is to drive something. Whether it's a white van or a minivan or a kind of taxi, etc. They actually tend to sort of say, as taxi drivers or white van drivers for a very long time. You know, and actually we want to reduce the risk of failure, get people to take very little risk. A white van driver or a taxi driver. Now that's possibly not what we want to do for our local economies, is have lots of low risk, low income earning businesses. So actually failure rates aren't that problematic if you get some of them to scale and go very big very rapidly. So if you're talking about a business that's taking capital out and wants to basically employ people and grow things and have income that can support more than themselves, the failure rate is high. It's about 25% for fail the first year. And then you say, do we have public programs to help them either recover or help them basically survive? No, not really. Obviously we have laws like the bankruptcy laws and things like that that allow people to have another go. But there is a culture all over Europe, and we are part of Europe, where unlike the States, we do probably don't give people a second chance as much as the culture is in America. The experience of America is the more they try, the better they get, the more likely they will survive and success.
Can I just, yet again, to follow on from that, I seem to be adding answers to bits and pieces as they go. You asked about a programme of what we're doing about units of fund, and I think it's an interesting point, and I think from a local perspective in a borough such as this, that's something that we need to understand. What are the barriers why are these things falling over and failing, and what do we need to do to influence it. There is another element of that as well, which I'm very keen to explore. And you know, the statistic that I put up, it seems like a long while ago now, about education establishments and people being ready for work. But there's also another element of that is, and I've sort of alluded to it a little bit earlier in one of the other responses, which was, what's the skill set? So if we have a conversation with people who are, let's say, starting up a new business, or indeed the people that have existing businesses, and they require a certain type of person with a certain type of skill, or skills, plural, if in education we are training people for something different to that, then there will always be a gap and businesses will suffer as a result. Equally, the individuals will suffer as a result because they're being trained in something that doesn't give them the opportunity to work. And then they fall into the worklessness bracket and they sit at home and the whole scenario begins to unravel. So there's some research that needs to be unlocked that says, why are we training people in a fairly traditional way when the entrepreneurs are requiring people with a different mindset and a different skill? And we have to, and I think it's a local authority role in part, I don't think we hold all of the answers, to try and understand that a little bit more and at least provide the information to actually, I think, you know, prevention is better than cure. Letting the business fail and giving them a chance is fine because they do get better, and that's absolutely right and factually true. But actually, I think it would be equally as good to put something in place that prevents it rather than reacting to the outcome. And that's kind of where I'm coming from.
There's not well not add, but encourage me to follow up on this issue of cultural attitudes to failure. Just to ask for some follow up on this cultural issue of attitudes to failure/experience, and what can be done about it. This is a large cultural attitude. What can be done to attack that issue? Because typically from various levels, a lot of people from local administrations might say, well, this big macro cultural stuff that we want to do. I'd like to think that's a very
I think actually there's a whole, as you know, at the EU level, national level and local level, there's a lot of debate at the moment across Europe about can we get an entrepreneurial culture like America? The argument you could say that America has, I think you've got the path dependency argument, has 60 years, 80 years of a culture that's been supportive of failure. 200 years. I mean, there are things such as, for instance, your credit history is not carried on more than 5 years. You know, which is kind of like, you know, things which are very important around the high growth, in the sense that in America you've had since 1960 the ability to write off £50,000 of debt. To do now, I think in many ways what it will take generations, but what we can do is emulate some of the regulations and some of the laws and some of the penalties, or remove some of those, but basically prevent people. I think actually the thing that we notice most in London, and I don't know the same here, is not actually, it's the people curbing their ambitions. Feeling actually, I will go self-employed, but I won't take the risk of actually doing something which requires me to build something which is new or innovative or productive, because I'm not quite sure whether that will work. I will just be a consultant. I get someone else, by someone else, as opposed to do my own solution and produce that. And that's a kind of challenge, I think, that we have here, which I'm sure our European friends also share. What can we do about it on the things that we're trying to do? We're trying to give people more opportunity. We're trying to educate them. We're trying to give them more understanding about the methodologies that have been developed, mainly in America again, that allows people to basically take their ambitions and basically produce a kind of scalable business. We're looking to basically build confidence where maybe in America you don't need it. And I think the point with the gentleman at the back of the site is skills are important. Building up your skill base is really important. I mean, in a service-based economy, you are likely to be starting a business based on the skills you've acquired in your employment history or life.
Just very, very quickly, in terms of making it easier, the UK does fairly well in terms of facilitating startups. I have a company here. It cost me, I've had it for about 10, 15 years. It's a translation company. It's what I started off so silly with my different languages.
It cost me a total of about £230 to start a limited liability company. £100 capital, £130 for the consultant. I mean, I'm sure it's gone up slightly in the last 15 years, but I mean, it's extremely different. My wife is from Germany. She tells me that you can't start up a company in Germany for less than about 10,000 euros. My German friends here may correct me if that's wrong, but you know, there's a hell of a difference between £230 and 10,000 euros. I know the exchange rate is all.
Well, I mean, we don't in the UK have a license system. I mean, who's here from Italy? Spain. Okay, well, in those countries, you have a license system. You need to get a trading license from your Chamber of Commerce. You have to put some money down. Things like that. I did a program on Spanish radio, believe it or not, about 6 months ago, and I started a business up in Britain for that Spanish radio station in 90 seconds. And they told me it'd take 28 days and a lot of money to do the same. So we did it in 90 seconds and it cost me £10. So, so we're kind of a different culture.
Okay, I think we're going to bring that to a close now. People will be around and you can grab them for questions. I think there's going to be a break now, and I'll hand over to Anna, who will explain what's going to happen next.
Okay, thank you very much for your questions. We're going to have a break now for coffee and to just stretch your legs. For those of you who are interested, there will be a short tour of the facilities. So can we be back here for our next session, which again will be short presentations from Prince's Trust and our own colleagues here, followed by another panel discussion. So can we be back here at 10 past 11, please, English time. Thank you very much.